وإنك لعلى خلق عظيم فستبصر ويبصرون.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعليه وصحبه أجمعين. ثم ما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So, Jazakallah khairan for joining, and inshallah, just continuing on for the in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So previously we finished off, and we mentioned that right now, after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we said that he started like his local business, and after that, he developed a reputation. He developed a reputation, and he now started his local business with a business partner. So he's gone back to his uncle Abu Talib, he's convinced him, let me start business. Let me actually start doing, going on business trips again. Abu Talib has allowed him to do this. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's gone on. One narration says that he's actually went on a business trip, um, outside to Hijaz in Bilad al-Sham, in the land of Sham, and this was on behalf of his uncle Abu Talib. So he actually went on this business trip. So he's Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as a young man in his 20s, of being a very good businessman, intelligent, being very honest. So, he's actually very good at business. So this is how we left off last week. And so, now at this stage, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you have to just understand that he's got this reputation in town, like he's trustworthy, honest, he's a great businessman as well. So at this time, there's a very wealthy woman in Mecca at the time. And this woman was by the name of Khadijah bint Khuwailid. Khadijah bint Khuwailid. Khadijah, the daughter of Khuwailid. And of course, we say, radiyallahu anha, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with her, the mother of the believers. So at this point in time, this was a very wealthy woman who lived in Mecca by the name of Khadijah bint Khuwailid. And she had been married twice before, actually. She had been married twice. Both her previous husbands, they had passed away, they had died. So now her second husband had also passed away. And she was a widow. She was extremely rich. She was very rich. And not just wealthy because of her husband's wealth, but she was born into a very wealthy family. So she herself, she was born into a very wealthy family. Her father, Khuwailid, he was extremely a wealthy person himself, very wealthy, and she was born into wealth. So Khadija radiallahu anha, she was very wealthy, and she was a very rich person, a very rich woman, who had possessed a lot of business assets. So she had a lot of business assets basically. And what she decided to do, because she had a lot of money, she decided to what do you do with your wealth when you have a lot of money? So she decided to grow her money and invest her money into doing further business. So Khadija, she she invested her money into uh, doing further business. And by the way, she decided to do that further business. How did she do it? She used to hire businessmen. So businessmen used to take her wealth, take her money, and go and do business on her behalf in the land of Sham. So, she would hire businessmen, go to Sham. The businessman would go take her goods, would go and sell them in Sham, right? And then they would buy more goods from Sham with the money they get by selling and bring them back to Mecca to sell. So do you understand? Like they'd buy lots of goods in Sham, and when they buy goods in Sham, they would basically bring those goods back to Mecca and sell those goods in Mecca. And then they'd make like a large, expect to make a profit and give that money to Khadija. So this is what the businessman used to do, the businessman that Khadija hired. So this is, as the problem was, what was the problem? The problem was, of course, because of the culture and situation and the lack of safety, like it wasn't safe, the culture at the time, a woman would not be able to do that part of a business. Like a woman could not travel to a sham by herself, like even just travel and do business. Like she had to hire somebody, she had to hire a businessman to do this for her, right? So she had to hire people on her behalf to do business. And this was a major problem for her. Like, why? Why was it a major problem? Because who would she hire? Who could she trust? Who could she not trust? And so this was a major cause of concern and a major problem for her, right? Like, obviously, you can see from her situation, she's got a lot of money, but she needs to hire somebody, hire businessmen, but who can she trust? Like, she can't just trust, she couldn't trust a lot of people to do this for her. So what she does, so what so now when she started to hear, so now at this stage, Khadija radiallahu anha, she starts to hear around, in Mecca, she hears about the reputation of this young man, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who's very intelligent. He's a very good businessman. Like she hears the reputation of this young man. And above all, like he was honest, he was trustworthy. So Khadija radiallahu anha, at this stage, she became extremely interested because she's hearing about this reputation of this young man. So she hears about this young man, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She hears about his reputation, and he was a very good businessman. He's very intelligent. He's very honest. He's very trustworthy. So Khadija is very interested at this stage. And she calls for Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to come and meet her in regards to a business proposal. So, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's been, like you would say, headhunted, like by a recruiter. Like they've seen how good he is at business. So the young man, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went to meet with her, and she basically told him that I'd like you to do business on my behalf. So this is what Khadija radiallahu anha, she told Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the thing is also, what she did was, the narrations don't make it very clear, but there's something interesting in the narrations that say that she offered Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam twice the amount of commission that she would offer anybody else. Because obviously she would have to give commission to this businessman, right? To go and do business on her behalf. She offers twice the amount of commission that she would offer to anybody else. So why would you offer twice the amount of commission to somebody? Like, why would you offer twice the amount of money? Besides the fact that, that she wanted to secure the services of the young Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's one reason, because he was so trustworthy and honest. She wanted to make sure she hired him. You're right. So that's why she offers him twice the commission. But also the reason is, some of the scholars, they were reading in between the lines, and they say that initially the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he might have declined her offer. Like, when she offered it, the proposal to him, initially he might have declined the offer because he's busy working on his local business, right, with his business partner. Like, he's busy establishing a business for himself. So, he's it's very possible that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, initially, he said, "Thank you very much. I'm very flattered. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not very interested at the moment," because maybe he was busy doing his own business. So that's why Khadija radiallahu anha, she offered the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam twice the commission. She says, "No, no, I'll offer you twice the amount of money, but I want you to do business for me. Like, I want you to work for me." So she's very, like, interested in recruiting Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so based on this, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he actually agreed. So he agreed, and he decided to work for Khadija radiallahu anha. So just pause again for a second here. Again, we see that the young Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was thinking like any other young man would do at this stage. Like, we can relate to this. Like, even though, we said he had no real material interest to gain wealth and money, but as a businessman, obviously making the most money, you look at the best opportunities, right? So when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was offered twice the amount of money, he accepted, right? Just like any other person would accept. So it just shows, like, he's just like any young man, you can relate to being in this situation. So what else happened at this stage? So some of the narrations, they don't mention the fact that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam initially traveled on behalf of his uncle Abu Talib to do business. So some narrations, they don't mention that. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to Khadija the problems. When the Khadija radiallahu anha, she says, "Okay, here's twice the commission, and I want to hire you." The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "There's a problem. The problem is that my uncle does not want me to travel for business." So this is mentioned, right? So it's also mentioned that she goes, Khadija radiallahu anha, at this stage, she went and she spoke to Abu Talib herself, saying, "I want your nephew to do business for me, and I'm very hopeful that everything is going to be okay." Like, she understands the concern, like, that the uncle, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, does not want him to travel to business, but she says, "I understand your concern, but everything is going to be okay. I hope everything should be fine. Don't worry. In fact, if it makes you feel better," Khadija radiallahu anha says to Abu Talib, "I have a slave by the name of Maysara." Maysara, right? His name is Maysara. He's a slave. I will send him with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the young Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'll send him with him. So she even, and Maysara, it's actually mentioned that Maysara was somebody who's very physically, he was strong, he was very talented, he was gifted, and he was actually a very skilled fighter, skilled archer. So basically, Maysara, he was the bodyguard of Khadijah radiallahu anha. So Maysara was her bodyguard. And she said to Abu Talib, I'll send Maysara with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He'll be okay, he'll be safe. He'll allow your nephew to do business for me. So she even does that. She even, gives him her bodyguard. So this is going to be good for everyone. Like I promise you, Khadija is very, very keen to hire him. So you can see, Khadija radiallahu anha, she's very keen, like we said, to hire Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and even giving him her bodyguard as well for the business trip. So that's what we understand. So also, some of the narrations they say, when we talked about the offering double money, they gave a different reason for why Khadija radiallahu anha gave double money, double commission, why she offered double commission to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And some of the narrations say that Abu Talib was very hesitant, and he actually said, "You've got to make it worth our while." Like he initially, when she wanted to hire the young Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Talib said, "You know what? You have to make it worth our while." Like he's very hesitant, and Abu Talib is the one who says, "I want you to pay double money. I want you to pay double what you would normally pay somebody." So Abu Talib, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, was looking out for the best interests of the Prophet ﷺ. So he demanded twice the amount of money, which shows that there's nothing wrong in a little negotiation, because according to this narration, it's Abu Talib who says, "Look, I'm not going to let him go unless you offer twice the amount of money." And so he was negotiating. And if somebody shows you that if somebody's very talented, then you should pay accordingly. All right. So we also learned this, that it's fine. You can do some negotiation. Somebody has the skills to do a certain job, a certain business, a certain something, and they have some skills. Then obviously they can demand more money as well. So what happens is after this, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam now is hired by Khadija radiallahu anha. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he goes to do business on behalf of Khadija radiallahu anha with her slave Maysara. Now, when they set out on the journey and they're traveling to Blad al-Sham, they're traveling to Asham, which is nowadays in Syria, but it's much more bigger area than Syria, like at that time, Blad al-Sham. And it takes, like we said, the going, it'll take a while, like like more than a month to actually get there. It's like a long journey. So the region of Syria is, like we said, is more wider than the region today. And what they do on the way, they stop at the monastery. So if you remember, and some interesting things start to happen. Now, remember when we mentioned the story of Buhaira the monk previously, who interacted with the Prophet ﷺ when he was about 10 years old, 12 years old. He went on a previous business trip with his uncle under Quraysh, and he met Buhaira the monk at that time at the same monastery. And the reason why they stopped there at that time as well, many years back, is because, the Quraysh always used to stop there for business. It was like a motorway service station. Like, you stop there, it's like services. You stop there, you get some refreshments, there's water, the vendors, they sell food. It was a nice place to stop. You could basically rest there. You could relieve yourself, go to, use the facilities. It was a nice rest area. So everybody that travels from Mecca to Asham, they always stop at this area. So the Prophet ﷺ and Maysara, when traveling to Asham right now as well, it was no different. They stopped there just as the Quraysh always did. And the narrations mentioned at that time, it was not Buhaira, the monk, who was in the monastery, because Buhaira now, most likely, like he's passed away, right? He's not there anymore. There was another monk who lived in the monastery at this time. And the narration mentions they still stopped there. The Prophet ﷺ, he was resting under a tree. So he's resting under the shade of a tree. And this is what happened. And what happened was the monk in this monastery at that time, so Maysara was getting some supplies. Maysara was doing some work or getting some supplies. The monk at that time, like he would often do, because like we said, the monastery, if you remember, was positioned high on a hill. It was high on a hill, so the one who's like the monk can actually see who's coming and who's going. So the monastery is high on a hill, and it's on a high place. You could see who's coming and going. He spotted these travelers. So the monk spotted these travelers coming, like from a distance. And he spotted, so these travelers have arrived now, and he spots something very interesting. So he kind of comes down from his monastery, like on a hill. He comes down and he meets Maysara at the water well, like he's collecting water, doing some work. And he says to Maysara, "Who's that man who's sitting there under the tree?" And Maysara says, That's Muhammad, son of Abdullah. And he's from the Quraysh, and they are the caretakers of the Haram, the caretakers of the Kaaba. So Maysara gives like an introduction to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The monk at that time, he tells Maysara, tells him there's something very interesting. He says, no man will sit underneath the tree at this time, at this place. Nobody will sit under that tree except for a prophet. Like this is what the monk tells Maysara. And basically he tells Maysara that there's something special about this young man. And this is a sign, and the monk said, this is a sign I read in our text, in our scriptures. And this sounds like deja vu, right? Like if you recall back, like in our earlier sessions, that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as a 10-year-old, as a 12-year-old, when he came to the same place, and at that time Buhaira said the same thing, like something very special about this young man, and the other monk who was there at the time. So the monk tells Maysara something very special about the man. This is I've seen these signs. I read them in our scriptures because remember the signs of the prophet to come are in the Christian scriptures. This monk is Christian, and in the original scriptures it's mentioned the coming of the final messenger. And this monk he tells this to Maysara, and he spots the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Maysara actually at this stage he gets very interested. He gets very curious. Like he's very interested. Like the monk is telling me some amazing things. So what also happens is, and just few more, a couple of more points left. Now they go to Asham. So after this incident happens, they carry on their journey to Asham. They do the business, and in fact, they actually make more profit than normal. Right? They go there, they buy lots of goods, they make a lot of profit. Traveling back, now they've done their business. They travel back from Asham. Maysara spots something very interesting. He spots something else. So remember, Maysara, when he talked to the monk before on the way, the monk got him very interested. Like it piqued the interest of Maysara. So now he's traveling back from Asham. Maysara has been keeping a very close eye on this young man, on Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's traveling a bit behind him. Like you can imagine, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is traveling in front. Maysara is traveling behind him, like he's kind of looking at him. He's seeing what's going on. He's staying a few steps behind him, and he keeps an eye on him. So Maysara, in fact, says that on the way back, it was some of the most extreme heat that we had ever dealt with on the journey. It was so hot. And during this time, there was extreme heat. Like it was brutal. It was so hot. And I noticed, this is what Maysara is saying, I noticed in this extreme heat that I noticed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was like very calm. Like he's so calm. He's calmer than any person would be traveling in such brutal heat. And so I kind of piqued my interest. And Maysara says that this man, Muhammad, what I did was I thought, what's going on? Like, why is he so calm? It's like boiling hot. So he says, I look up and I see the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I see this young man, and this man, he's been covered by a shade. He's traveling. He's been covered by a shade when he's traveling. In fact, the narration mentions, on behalf of Maysara, the narration mentions that Maysara is saying that it's as if I saw two angels shading, providing shade over Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he was traveling. So Maysara is completely blown away. Like, what's going on? It's like as if I can see two wings or two angels providing shade over this young man in the extreme heat. And remember previously, like when we talked about this young man when he was 10 years old, 12 years old, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he came last time, when he came to Asham, and we mentioned how a cloud shaded him at that time, and how the monk noticed a cloud. Buhaira noticed like a cloud shading this young man. So even now, there's obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this shade which Maysara is talking about. So after this, what happens is they return back to Makkah. They're coming back. They're coming back from Asham with the goods they purchased, and the money that they made in Asham. So they come back to Makkah, right? And they bought lots of goods from Asham, right? They're specific, they're unique to the region of Asham. You can only find these in Asham. And they get these goods, they bring them back with them to sell in Makkah. So, like we said, the business is, they bought a lot of goods. Now they're going to come back to Makkah and sell them in Makkah. When they arrive back in Makkah with all these goods, they sell these goods in Makkah. Like that's part of the whole business agreement, the arrangement, right, with Khadijah radiallahu anha. And part of the business contract means you have to sell these goods in Makkah now, right? And again, the goods they sell in Makkah, they make more profit than normal. Like so overall, just think that they made this amazing profit a very solid profit. Like they make an amazing profit in Asham by buying these goods with the money that Khadija gave. They come back to Makkah, they make an extraordinary profit in Makkah as well. And so all of this good stuff is happening. Like obviously, you know, there's barakah, there's blessings, you know, with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like they make, they made so much profit. So next session, we'll go through what happens next. As you know, when all the business is done, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Maisara, they sit down with Khadija radiallahu anha, and they settle the accounts. They do the accounts, and we look at the thoughts and the reactions of Khadija radiallahu anha, and what are her dealings, you know, what does she find in terms of her dealings in business with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and give us an understanding of his life and give us the ability to practice and follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.